It's just kind of like a repetitive kind of hamster wheel of like staying at 10K a month.
And like you all of a sudden get a lot of clients. For like creatives, I think it's really hard to grasp that because it's very hard to scale and duplicate.
It'll be very tough to kind of go beyond.
You're going to miss out on a lot of time and opportunity that you can get from building a business. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Agency Podcast, episode number 4, I think it is, right? Yep. Let's do it.
Yeah, episode 4.
Yep. This one's going to be a fun topic. We're going to talk about scaling your agency past that 10K mark. Probably talk a little bit about what you're probably experiencing at that 10K mark, and some ways to get over that hump, because I think it is a hump in many ways for a lot of agency owners that we talk to, a lot of agency owners that we work with, and we've been there. So this will be a fun conversation, because a lot of people, again, are in that spot, and it's a weird spot because you're sort of doing everything yourself. You know what I mean? It's like you can't really afford to hire people. I mean, you could, but yeah, I remember my 10K, I was like overwhelmed and confused.
Yeah, it's definitely a
Imposter
grind.
syndrome.
Yeah, it's definitely a grind. Like 0 to 10K is like all just like clarity and then just like work to get there. Like a lot of like manual labor, doing it yourself. I do find that there have been like patterns. Like I think because of like our messaging and like how we like do these videos, a majority of like who books in with us are like around like I'd say 0 to 10K.
Yeah.
More specifically, I would say 5 to 10K per month. And I'll usually hear like kind of the same things. What I usually see, and it's, I mean, funny enough, it was like exactly where I was too, is like from 5 to 10K a month or even 0 to 10K a month. Oftentimes it's just like one person doing like everything and like just working like long hours to just make it happen. And like they've figured out some stuff to like get results. And obviously like 10K a month is like no easy feat. So it's definitely a good milestone, but there's still like other things missing so that they can get past it. Otherwise, it's just kind of like a repetitive kind of hamster wheel of like staying at 10K a month. Was that kind of like your experience, Austin? Like when you were at 10K a month, what were some of like the bottlenecks that
Yeah.
you came
I think,
across?
I think it's like I think it's a turning point, because I think there's 2 ways people get to $10,000 a month. One, they either grind with lead gen and like get a bunch of clients, or 2, they're really skilled and a lot of people want to hire them. Maybe more so in like the creative space, like as a videographer or a social media manager or something like that. And like you all of a sudden get a lot of clients. So the 2 routes that I see is like, one, you can be a freelancer and increase your prices and like just continue to do that. It's risky in many ways because you risk the idea of a client leaving and that significantly hitting your income, like changing your income drastically. And then you don't have time to really do fulfillment because you only have so much like capacity, essentially.
Bandwidth. Yeah.
Exactly. Or B is you hire people and you get more clients so that you can hire people, and then you make your money mostly off of the profit, and you get 3 more clients, and then you increase the revenue while sacrificing some margin. So that's kind of the breaking point for that. And I think for me, it was very much like, oh, like I'm making, like, I think I was like 25K a month before I hired my first person, to be honest. Or like I had like a part-time person that was paying like $1,500 or something like that. And I was like, okay, I really need to build a team and like grasp this concept and think like an agency owner and think like a CEO. So that's what, like, that was my move. I was very much like, had a skill set. A lot of people wanted it, and like was just trying to figure out the whole model of an agency. I did not have delegation in mind. I didn't have CEO in mind. It was very much like, oh crap, like I'm overwhelmed. I got to do something about this. It was reactive, very much so.
Yeah, it's almost like it's like it requires a mindset shift. Like you have a choice to make of, do I want to stay kind of like in this spot here where I'm like basically like self-employed, like how you said, like freelancer,
Yeah.
and do I want to stay there, right? I'll kind of it'll be very tough to kind of go beyond, I would even say probably 20K, like if you raise it and you double up your prices, like you might get from 10 to 20. So that might be a fast kind of fix for it. But it's going to be very hard, like as just like your own, to get to like 50K a month, definitely 100K a month, just on your own. Like very few people I've seen that have pulled it off. So it's kind of like making a mindset shift and a choice of like, all right, do I want to stay down this road, or do you want to like already start thinking like as a business owner and more thinking about like owning an asset, a system, kind of like an investment. Like that's how
Totally.
I kind of view it as well. Cause like once you have this cash flowing asset, you get to a point where like it just runs without you and you're kind of like more of an investor in it. I mean, especially like more so you, Austin, like you have a CEO for Brain Strategic. More than anything, you've gone into like investor level inside of there. So it's kind of making that shift of like, okay, continuing down this road and it's all just like off of manual labor and like just sweat equity, or do we want to like now think about elevating to the next level, which is now like creating a system, creating systems, developing an asset that's going to, provide cash flow. That's how I thought about it.
I think it's 100% a mindset shift. Like, it's like, how do I create this? And yeah, like exactly what you're saying, a system. And then how do I leverage talent to work the system so that I can work myself out and focus on vision stuff and being a CEO, which totally different, like totally different thing than being in the grind, especially for like creatives. I think it's really hard to grasp that because it's very hard to scale and duplicate like strong creative, I guess you can say. But yeah, I mean, it's a choice. I mean, if some people want to be in the grind and like be doing stuff and like that's totally on them. But like, I think it's just, you're going to miss out on a lot of time and opportunity that you can get from building a business, which is at the end of the day what we want to do. So
yeah, I think for those that are listening to this podcast, you're probably in the stage where like you are looking to grow your agency and like really build it out like as a business. And if you're at that 10K a month mark, you probably experience like some of the things that me and Austin said. So kind of going to like dovetail on what Austin said, like how do we create that shift from like 10 to 20 to 50 to ultimately like 100 plus, however you want to take the agency? One of the most common bottlenecks I see, like I would say number one, that a lot of people that are around 0 to 10K a month rely on is just going purely off of like referrals. When we talk about like having systems in place, one of those key systems that has the highest leverage that you can do to immediately change your situation is really having like a client acquisition process in place, like having one way of getting clients and just repeating that and scaling that at 10K a month. That's one of the biggest movers that can really, from what I've seen, in my own colleagues that are agency owners, but then even like agency U students, like if we just have like a really good repeatable marketing process of getting clients, that can easily shift them pretty fast. The other side of this, so this is like more front end, like what happens like, to get clients and getting off of like relying on referrals. Austin, can you talk about like back end? So like once something that happens internally in the agency to move them from like 10 to let's say 30, what needs to happen?
yeah, I think it's like looking at what you're doing for clients as a system and creating a system around that. Like business, like what you're saying, is just a system. It's a mechanism that you have created that you are working. And like you are intrinsically or you are subconsciously like working a system as you're doing work for a client. If you're just getting going, if you're just a freelancer, now what you need to do is document that system. And then what happens is basically business is simply just people working systems. So you just need to create a system that eventually somebody can then work. So that's how like the mindset of thinking about it. So I think like immediately, if it is just you, it's like, how do I start thinking about what I'm doing every single day from a systemized approach, as if I'm going to teach somebody how to do this, and create mechanisms around what you're doing so that you can then teach somebody how to do it. And then who you're teaching is going to be a very specific role. Another mistake I see a lot of people is like they'll hire like a jack of all trades person, like as their first hire, and they think that they're going to do client success and like ads and video and all of this stuff, and it's like not going to work. You need to hire specialists. So
Yeah.
like, who's the specialist that's going to work that particular part of the system? Like a videographer, a video editor, an account manager, client success manager, etc. And then build up your business in order to support those roles, essentially, or start small and kind of ease into it. But the first step is like thinking about it and then creating the mechanisms around it into a system.
Yeah, I think that reminds me of like this it was this chart that I saw, and it was basically like the three levels of any organization. It's like technicians, which are basically like the hands of the organization, managers for more of like the head, the brains of the organization, and then the heart, which is basically like the CEO, the one that's running and managing the managers and all that stuff. Like in that first stage, like 10K a month, getting to like 20, 30, 40, 50, it's like all about getting like more hands on deck. And the only way you can have like more hands on deck is by having systems for them to follow. Otherwise, you kind of run into this kind of chaos situation where like they're coming in, but they don't really have anything to follow because there is no process in place, right? Like no system. And then that creates, that puts us in a situation where like they don't actually know kind of what success looks like of like, how do I know if I'm doing a job? Like, what are the expectations? What are the KPIs? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? Right. And A players, like employees that are like really good, that's something that if you don't have that, you're going to drop them really fast because that's the number one thing that they need. Right. So if you have like a B or C player, maybe you can get away with it, but like to really have like a rock star team, you need to have those systems in place. And that starts by like what we call like productizing your agency, like making it so that it's a well-oiled machine. And that's ultimately like how you create like the freedom and be able to do all this stuff, like to be able to be hands off with the agency and like make it an asset is like really productizing it. So if someone comes in, a new client comes in, everyone gets the same amazing result, right? Because we have like the same steps to follow and create that result. So that's kind of like the main thing. I think it's adding leverage by having like productizing it, like we talked about, and then hiring would be like the next step after that. And I think a lot of people think it's like they need to like have like someone that's like, you know, someone from like a corporate job that they're going to pay 5K a month to. I know, Austin, you mentioned like your first hire was like 1,500 a month that you paid. So it's really a transition that's not like has to be sudden. It's something that can happen, you know, just slowly, right? You first systematize your process. Like you understand like, all right, here's the system that I always follow. I have it documented. Let me bring on someone part-time. I'm gonna give them some work. And then that's gonna free up your time and a lot more bandwidth to focus on sales. And then with that money that you have come in, higher profits, you know, it's kind of a multiple. There's this mentor that I had that said that each employee that you bring in, and maybe Austin, you've heard of it. I don't know if I'm getting this one right. It's like they should be able to bring in about 4 times or 5 times the amount that you pay them. So if like you pay someone X amount per year, they should be able to like produce like 4 times the amount of value for the company as a result of that. So that's like one of the things like that was unforeseen for me. Like when I brought on like my first one, I like quickly saw like within the first couple weeks, it like frees up your time, but it also frees up like your mental bandwidth so that you can like now like think clearly, so you can like come up and show up to sales calls like with much more energy, a lot more clarity. It's a huge difference. And so that's kind of one of the biggest things for someone in that 10K a month mark, wanting to like transition onto that next stage and being able to do it. Those are kind of like some of the steps that at least I followed.
Yeah, I think the huge thing that you hit on that would be important to echo or just like maybe even dive deeper on is like setting expectations when you are hiring people and being clear. Because I think so many people are like, oh yeah, can you just like for creative, for example, like I remember going through like 4 different videographers and I hired them super bad. Like I was like, oh yeah, like they're really good and like they have an impressive portfolio. Like they know how to do it. they know how to shoot this, they know how to send this, they know how to edit it. And I just assumed that they knew like how to do it. But like, and then when they didn't do it the way I did it, like I got pissed and I would talk bad about them like to Mark or whatever. And I'd be like, oh my God, like they suck, whatever. But in reality, it was me not setting good expectations or good guidelines for what the person should be doing. And it's like, I think as entrepreneurs or freelancers, it's like we're very like adaptable and like um can just like make decisions. One, because it's our business, and two, that's just how most entrepreneurs are wired. But like that's not how it is when you hire somebody. Like people want to be told exactly what to do, what like what you said, what success looks like, what are my KPIs. So if you can get crystal clear on that before you even hire somebody, you're going to actually have A players and actually get work done at the standard that you want the work to be done. Any frustration is just expectation. And if you're not setting the expectations up front, you're going to end up being frustrated. So that's key when hiring. And that's why it's so important to have a process and productize, like what you said, which is massive. I mean, I made so many mistakes when hiring, just like I'm a little bit more graceful and I'm like, oh yeah, just do it. Like I trust you. And it just, that doesn't work at all. Like
Yeah, even if
they're
they're
not your
really
business
good,
partners.
yeah, even if they're really good and they have the raw talent, like that's only the prerequisite. It's not like everything now, like all the boxes have been checked, because you have the raw material and now you have to like shape it into like what is your product. So like
Mm-hmm.
someone who might be like an excellent video editor, they have like their own style of doing things, like their own process and all that stuff that might not fit into like how you do things in your agency to get the result in the specific way in which like you deliver to the client. So yeah, even if it is someone like even like a closer, for example, like that's the most relevant one for me. That was like a huge learning curve for me, is like, all right, this person's already really good and they're good at sales, like I'm just gonna let them do their thing. But I quickly found out that's definitely not the way to do things. Like you
Yeah.
have to show them like how you do things and like how they can start using that raw talent, the skills and talents they have, to like mold it into like how you do your process for your niche, for your people that you serve and all that stuff.
Yeah.
The other one I was going to mention too, like this is kind of like one of those things that's like foundational. So we kind of like skipped ahead, like systems and productizing the agency. One of the things that like I find some of the individuals who are like at, let's say 5, 10 to 10K a month, they don't yet have like super duper clarity on like what it is that they do offer. So like it's hard to like create systems if we do like, let's say websites, we do
Mm-hmm.
SEO, we do Google
Yeah.
ads for plumbers, HVAC, mortgage, real estate, pretty
Yeah.
much anyone that has money.
Yeah.
It's really, really tough to like begin to even build a process or a system, because there's not like one thing that you're doing for a specific person, right? It has to be like one thing that you're doing, because for each thing, like even I'll give like a very easy example. It's like, let's say you're running ads for real estate. Well, there's like the creatives that you're using are very specific to like real estate, right? The copy that you're creating, you have to figure that out. There's like a learning curve, like finding what's the like winning copy. And then even when you're delivering it too, like setting the right expectations with the clients, like all of these things that are like unforeseen. Like it's really like important that you have like one specific niche and one specific offer. Because if you do like, let's say you're doing Facebook ads for real estate agents and then now you're doing Facebook ads for HVAC, you're now having to like
Different
reinvent the wheel
business.
again. Yeah, like another type of copy that you have to figure out, like what's working, what's the messaging that's working right, the creatives, how do we deliver this, how do we, like every niche is different, like the mindset in different industries is different personality types. There's so many like moving factors in like doing different offers for different niches. But if you can
Totally.
have like one offer to one niche, at least in the beginning, right? You can always add like upsells at a later point, but just having like clarity, the one offer, one niche, it'll allow you to create like a system, because you're relatively doing the same thing
Yeah.
over and over again. And you figured it out, whether it was like conscious or unconsciously. So now you have to like document it. And then that's where you can like give it off to someone. But if you're doing like everything for like everyone, it's going to be incredibly difficult,
Yeah.
especially at 10K a month, to really like scale up.
Yeah. I remember like again, we grew quickly because we had a skill set that a lot of people wanted. And it was like, I get where people come from, where they're like, I want to say yes to multiple things. I
Yeah.
want to be able to like, I don't want to turn down this money that's in front of me. I don't want to like say no. I don't want to disappoint this client or this referral or this person that referred somebody over to me because they want to use my service. But what happens is, again, you're trying to juggle too many things. You can't productize it. You're going to eventually let the clients down because you can't actually fulfill on what you're promising when you're actually selling, or it's just going to take 2x the amount of time during fulfillment. And like even creating a process around that specific thing that you just said yes to is not going to be worth it because you're never going to do it again. And it's like, you're just going back to that hamster wheel analogy. You're just back on the hamster wheel and you're starting from zero again. So I get where it's like super hard to do that, but it's like,
Yeah.
okay, be disciplined with your no's, like be disciplined with your yeses, be confident, like be secure, be convicted on what you're offering, and then like just stick to it.
Yeah, I remember being in that stage too. I think the reason why I had done like one service to one niche was because like I had listened to like podcasts like this and like YouTube
Yeah.
videos, and every single like guy that I had like followed at that time that was doing like SMMA videos that was successful with it, doing at least like let's say 20, 30K a month or whatever, they all said the same thing, like pick one niche, pick one niche.
Yeah.
In the mindset that I was in, like I really disagreed with it. Like I didn't like get that because it's like, all right, I'm just gonna say no to this person that's like offering me 2K a month.
Yeah.
But what I didn't understand was like, yeah, I'm saying yes to this one right here, but I'm never ever gonna get beyond 10K a month because of the reasons that Austin and I just mentioned. So I just chose to like trust, like obviously this person is there because they know something that I don't. They show the results in clearly they're showing the results in their own life. I'm not. So I just like I didn't agree with it, but I was like, I'm just gonna go with it. I'm just gonna trust.
Mm.
He knows what he's talking about. And sure enough, like it worked. Like I was able to scale past 10K a month. But it was only like after I kind of got past, so another mindset shift, like got past the limiting belief that I had of like not being able to say no. And that's
Yeah.
really like in terms of just any sort of scale, it's just you're gonna get more opportunities, and like it's all about like your ability and discipline of saying no. I've had so many different opportunities along the way of like scaling to 160K a month where I like had so many other things. I was like thought about switching niches so many damn times.
Yeah.
like like so many times. And like thankfully I'd like didn't at all switch it, and that's what got us there. But it was like through a process of like consistently saying no, like avoiding like the crypto, like everyone like
Mhm.
doing all this stuff, the drop shipping, like the Amazon FBA, like Airbnb arbitrage, like all that stuff, just
Yeah.
ignoring like literally most of what I saw, and then just concentrating on like what's working, and then just scaling that, doing more of like this one or two things that I do to scale up the agency.
Yeah. It's so much easier too with like a messaging and sales calls. Like if you're like, oh, I could do this, we could do this, we could do that. We help this person, we help this person versus like we help real estate agents get more deals and increase their listings or whatever it is. It's like that's all you're specializing in. And then to the client, they see you as an expert versus like a generalist. You know what I mean? And also, like I always use the like analogy of okay, if you have to get back surgery, would you rather go to the doctor who does back surgery, wrist surgery, elbow surgery, like sometimes some foot surgery, also does some like naturopathic consulting, or the doctor who has just does back surgery and that's all they do. That's all they do every single day. It's like you're going to go to the specialist because you trust them. Same thing with a client investing their money into you. It's like they need to trust you and your message needs to resonate with them and their pain points. And they're going to the trust factor is going to be significantly higher if it's niche down. So
Yeah.
I know
From a
we're hitting
sales
this point
perspective
hard
too,
too. Yeah, sales. Oh my gosh,
from a
done.
sales perspective too, like you're one of the things like when you don't have a niche, it's one of the common objections you could get is like, well, I don't know if this will work for my industry.
Yeah,
Right. But if you're niche down, you have like one offer, like you automatically, like if they've seen your website and you have some case studies and testimonials, it's not even a conversation. at all. Like they don't bring it up because it would be ridiculous to, right? Like you wouldn't like you wouldn't go to like a heart surgeon and say like, yeah, I don't know if like this will like work for me because
Right.
you haven't had the experience or whatever. No, because like you've seen like, all right, this person has the track record. Like they clearly have specialized in doing like this one thing for people that are just like me. So sales calls and meetings with these business owners become way easier when you're able to show like, hey, when it comes to this specific thing, like Austin's, for example, like when it comes to creating short form videos for real estate agents in Bellevue, there's no one that does it like us. Like no one. He's like automatically the authority.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I know we're just hitting this point, but point is have a niche, be disciplined with the niche, and um, productize it, right? Like don't just wing it. Don't be the freelancer. It's the mindset shift.
Yeah. One niche, one offer, one process. I think
Yeah.
if we were to summarize like what we just like talked about, that would be it. Like if you're in a spot where you're thinking to yourself like you disagree with the point of like you think that you can do it, you do have two choices there. Like you can continue to think that, or you can just trust in myself in Austin and just follow that like I did before and pick just one niche. Doesn't matter which one it is, so long as like it's a niche that isn't selling like, you know, $20 things or $5 things. As long as it's a good niche and you have one offer that you've seen other people sell to that niche and you document it, I promise you, like it's going to be very hard for you to stay at 10K a month if you continue to hammer it out and continue to take action on it. You will easily get past 10K a month and to like 30K a month if you just did those three things.
So like I think one thing that I remember thinking a lot about when I was like first getting going and um like as people are transitioning from that freelancer as they're doing a lot of different things, it's like who is my first hire? Like who do I need to invest in to help me out? Like maybe it's an assistant or client success or videographer or whatever it is. Like what was that thought process for you? Because I think that could help a lot of people just because they might make the wrong hire or they might hire somebody too quickly or something like that. What was that thought process for you?
Of making the first hire.
Mm-hmm. Remember like who to
Yeah.
hire and like how to know who to hire. Like
I
if
think
I'm
for
at
the most
10K
part,
and I'm doing everything in the business, how do I know who to hire?
yeah, I think for the most part, there's if you're at 0 to 10K a month, anywhere around that, or specifically 5 to 10K a month, you're probably doing all the fulfillment stuff yourself. And so we want to just look at, okay, for me, the thought process I took was like, all right, I'm doing it all myself right now. I do realize I need to hire in someone to help me. I need to increase sales. I need to increase sales so that I have enough to be able to bring someone on, even if it's part-time, to help me with the fulfillment. So what I did was I brought on a VA who at the time I was doing just all the prospecting myself. I was literally doing everything. So like prospecting, onboarding the clients, managing the clients, doing the fulfillment. It was crazy overwhelming. So what I did was like, all right, I just brought on a VA and all their job was just aggregating list of prospects and then following my already documented process that I had from a coach that I had hired at that time. So I had a proven process that it was already given to me and that I've already proven that it works. And I just started taking like a piece of it, like 20%. All right, start building this list. I'll do the reach out. Then slowly what I started doing was like, okay, cool. You're building the list. Now follow these responses here. If the prospect says this, send this. Okay. Now that you've been able to do that, you can now just book it on the calendar. So I started just stacking more and more and more. And so then as they showed me like that they can get the job done and we refined a couple things, I started bringing them full time.
Mm-hmm.
And actually this person is still with me right now. So that's pretty crazy. So they're still in like my agency. And so as I did that and I started bringing on more clients because I had help from people from this VA bringing on more sales meetings on my calendar, I now had more profits coming in. So I used that to now bring in like our someone in for fulfillment, which would help me in the same way that I did it for the front end. I did it with the back end. I took a piece of it and then I showed them from an already documented process. All right, I'm gonna get 20% of this. I'm gonna give it to you. So then I show them how to do it. They do it on their own. Perfect. We make any tweaks, any refinements, and then we add on more. So now I'll give them 40%. Okay, cool. They show me that they can do it, make any tweaks, and then I start stacking more and more. And so that's pretty much in the beginning, like that's how I did it. Was like in pieces for like the front end first, and then on the back end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, for us, who is mine? My first was like a contract videographer. I had no idea about pricing. I had no idea about anything, but I hired a contract videographer to help me out with shooting because I was doing all the video myself. Yeah, paid him $1,500 a month. Then he left because I probably wasn't paying him enough and had no idea what I was doing and set horrible expectations. And then cycled through probably 3 other contract videographers. Um, as I was also doing the video work, and then also hired a graphic designer to help because we were creating a lot of graphics for people, who I found on Upwork, literally. And she was with us for like 3 years, which was awesome. But same thing from your perspective is like, hey, let me just whip out a process for each client. Like I think I did everything on Trello and just like taught her how to do a process. And luckily she was pretty self-starting, and I was very transparent to the fact that like, hey, we're a startup. I don't really have a lot of systems built out, but if you have new innovative ways how to do this, like please let me know. So that was really helpful from that jump. And then once I started realizing, okay, this is actually a business and could turn it into something, and I was like, okay, I need to actually find somebody to hire. So then we found Peter and fired the other videographers that we were like testing out. And then Peter joined us and then was a contractor part-time, just like you, until we had enough work for him and he was super overwhelmed working full-time. And I was like, okay, we'll hire you full-time. And then we did that. Now he's the creative director at Brantigic, which is pretty cool. But yeah, and it was very much like I threw a lot of people in the fire. I realized later that like systems and really clear processes were super important because in the creative space, like you want to toe that line of like boundaries and also like letting people be creative. So I was trying to find it, I think, from the hiring perspective.
Yeah, I think that's the important part too. Is for those of you listening that are at 0 to 10K a month, or even at like 15 to 20, that are looking to scale up, like don't be afraid to make mistakes, because like there are some things that because you haven't done it, like you will mess up, you will make mistakes, and like that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. It just means like these are learning opportunities that are going to like create the business that you're building.
Yeah,
So don't let something like that, like, oh, I might not get it right, like the perfectionist mindset,
totally.
like,
Don't
you
listen
know,
to us and be
hurry.
paralyzed by like the idea of, oh, I need this perfect system and this perfect onboarding process and this perfect hiring process. It's like, no, just make the hire and adapt as you go.
Yeah. And even like those little mistakes, you might think that, I think most of the time, unless it's like a significant kind of error, like you're the only one that knows like how it should look like, especially if it's kind of a smaller error. And like the client doesn't really know. Like they don't know like what should be expected, because you're the one that sets the expectations. Like you're the one that's like really like in charge of the whole show. So it's like a lot of those mistakes don't make them more like bigger than they actually are. So I would just definitely, for that's kind of like another mindset shift. It's kind of like minimizing like the kind of like avoidance of errors and like mistakes, because those will come up. Like no one's perfect. You'll have your set of mistakes, but don't let that be the thing to get in the way, because like those will always be there.
Yeah, for sure. And that's how you improve other people and create the A players and shape them. What about like, I think another big thing that could be helpful to hit on is like pricing. Right? I think pricing, there's a lot of illogic around it, if that's even a word. That people get hung up, they pull stuff out of their butts, or they realize later down the road that they can't afford to hire anybody, or they're trapped and they're stuck. We've been there multiple times. And that's something that we get hit up a lot about. Like what was your thought process around pricing your offer?
Yeah. So I am like, whenever I start something new, I'm always like a big believer of like someone has already figured this out. I'm going to pay them to figure out what they figured out, whether it's a course or mentorship. So a lot of my pricing was already based on, all right, what is currently what the market is paying for. So I know like, all right, perfect. This is what the market is willing to pay for. I'm going to start in that specific thing. I knew for me to produce an appointment, because ours was like an appointment setting offer, is an appointment setting offer. And at that time, because I didn't have any overhead or anything like that, I mean, to produce even one appointment was like 10 bucks to produce an appointment. So we promised 15 appointments. So my cost to fulfill on that was 150. And I started, I think for the first 3 months, it was like 1,000 a month. And then I went over to like 1,500 a month. And then I just kept increasing it. So, and then I went to like the paid in fulls and all that kind of stuff. But I pretty much just used like, I got a mentor. They showed me like what I can offer, what people will pay it for. And then I just followed that. And then I always kept an eye on like my expenses as well, to make sure that I was always profitable, that the expenses aren't like drastically going up as I scaled. So that was kind of like my thought process for it. I wanted to just kind of shortcut it and just find like, cool, what's the market willing to pay? Cool. I'm gonna make that my starting point.
Yeah. You're more like value based.
Yeah.
Value based.
100%. Yeah. Value-based pricing.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, for us, we hired a consultant pretty early on, I would say, just because we were super confused on it. And how we did it was basically assuming time for our offer and then making sure that we're making margin on it. So let's say we have an offer that's like 10 videos a month, and I know that I need to price essentially to delegate this so that I'm not doing it. And I know that I can pay somebody $40 an hour in order to do this, and it's going to take them 10 hours to do. So that's going to cost me $400 to fulfill that offer. So now I know that every time I sell that, I need to charge at least $1,200 for that offer in order to make 66.666% margin on it. And then that way we make whatever that is, $800 every time we sell that offer. And I'm pricing it to delegate. So that's really how we did it, was just having the mindset of price to delegate with a margin attached to it. So every time we sold the offer, we knew, okay, we were going to make $1,200 from this offer or whatever it is, profit. And that kind of gave us a safety net. And it gets more complicated as you scale, of course, but that's like a good foundational point, is like write out your offer, write out who's going to do it, write out how much it would cost to hire somebody to do it, times that by 3, 4, 5, whatever it could be. And that's your safety net of hiring and safety net of pricing. I think that's something that a lot of people just don't really do or realize, especially starting off, because it's just like, I'm just gonna throw a number out. Especially as a freelancer.
Something like, I think it's like a symptom of like a bigger thing was what, like you reverse engineered already. And I did that as well. Like I already kind of was projecting like, all right, what would my business look like at 50K a month, 100K a month? And then I reverse engineered it even at like 10K a month, what I would need to do like now to set myself up for those type of numbers.
Yeah.
Right. So you kind of like, what I hear from what you like saying right now is like, you kind of reverse engineer, like, okay, here's what I want to get to. Like, what do I need to be doing now in order to get closer to that goal? Which I think a lot of, well, maybe not a lot of, but like, I think I'm sure there's a portion of guys that are doing 10K a month right now, a lot of agency owners that might not be thinking that far ahead. Or it might seem like unfathomable, like just outside of their reality of like thinking like of getting that to that level. So it kind of requires you to like think outside of your current circumstance and situation, and just start thinking about like, what would that look like? Just begin to like ask yourself those questions. Like, what would that look like at 50K a month? Like, what do I really want from this agency? Like, in your mind, there's no one judging you at all. Like there's no one setting like limiting beliefs on like only yourself. So you have that freedom to like be able to imagine like, okay, cool. Like what do I really want from this agency? Like, do I want it at 50K a month, 100K a month, 30K a month? What would it look like for me? Like, who would I need in place to even hit that?
100%.
Okay, like what can I do now? What can I start setting up now to be
Yeah.
able to hit that goal?
Yeah. Super easy way to do that, like practically, is like create an org chart. So, like, think about, okay, if I had an org chart, me, two other people doing this, three other people doing this, just kind of dependent on your offer, then you know that they all have 160 hours a month to work. So, based off of your offer, if your offer takes 4 hours, or let's just call it 10 hours per person, they can handle 16 clients. So, do that for every single person in the org chart. And then multiply that by your offer cost, and that will give you what your revenue level will be with that sort of org, and then the profit that you'll also assume. And then it's right in front of you and it's realistic. Like what you're saying, like write it down, think about it, like set realistic goals backed by like math. Like it's just simple math at the end of the day. And it'll give you a really good visual of what you can build into, as well as when you're hiring people, like, hey, I want to build you up into this role, and get them excited about it and cast a vision when you're hiring people as well.
Yeah, very methodical way of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was I always like to start there is like, all right, let your mind kind of like run wild on like, all right, no limits, like what do I want? And then like as you start to get closer to like what's going on now, like figure out ways, and like Austin's is a really like practical way of like being able to get there. Like figure out like, okay, like what components need to happen right now, like, you know, even what kind of person do I need to be too. So that's more like intangible,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a thing that also matters as well. Like, who do I need to be as well? Like, what kind of habits do I need to drop to get there? What kind of like mindsets do I need to drop? Um, you know, all of those things are like super important, right? So I'm always a huge proponent of that. Like all of, you know, yes, put into place like the systems, the tactics, like all the practical stuff, and then also like look internally as well, like because you're the cause for that growth. So let's look at the cause and what do we need to fix there? Like what, you know, habits do we need to let go of to become that version 2.0 that is at 50K a month? I know you had a post, I saw it like in Instagram, of some of the things that you did when you started kind of like growing the agency, like habits that you had dropped. What are some of those for you?
Yeah, I think for I think one, so I would just say the most important person to lead is yourself. And you need to become a leader that you would follow at the agency level that you want to be at. Meaning, would you look up to you if you were employed by you? Like that's the question you got to kind of like look at yourself in the mirror and like ask yourself. So like that means taking care of your fitness, taking care of your mindset, taking care of your relationships, finding balance in your life, like uncover, like doing the deep work, and figuring out who you are and like what kind of leader you want to become, and focus on being a leader, especially if you're hiring employees and you're hiring a team. Like leadership and communication and all of that stuff is so much more important than the tactical skill set of running an agency. Like, because once you start hiring people, your most important client becomes your team, because they're the one that's going to be actually working with the clients. And if they're not bought in, if they're not excited, they're not going to do well for the clients, which is going to lead to churn, bad reputation, whatever it could be. So you need to make sure that you're working on your leadership and becoming a leader worth following.
100%. Yeah, there can't be, it's very hard to like keep someone that's like growing at a faster rate or
For sure.
much ahead of who you like where you're at in your own personal development. Like it's very hard for them to follow you if they're like ahead of you,
Totally.
right? So like for me, like I know that I'm the one that's doing like the most amount of work in the agency, that I'm not only just externally but internally as well, like growing as a person and doing that work that's required, like how Austin said, like the deep work, the hard work, and what I like call like the inner work, like the like everything that we just mentioned now, like the mindset stuff, like doing all of those things so that you're able to be that person that, you know, your team looks up to and
Totally.
is impressed by, right? Like
Do
someone that's,
ayahuasca is what you're saying?
say it again.
Do ayahuasca is what you're saying?
Yeah. And
That's for,
shrooms.
that's for another episode.
Hi, oh wait, ayahuasca changed my agency.
Yeah, there you go. All right, y'all. Well, thanks for listening. Hopefully this was of value. Hopefully you got some nuggets from this that you can take away, and you guys were taking notes, hopefully, and you guys got some from it. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to hit us up on Instagram. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube, and be sure to give this a thumbs up on YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you are watching on YouTube, and if you're listening, be sure to leave a rating where you're listening. We're trying to post out a weekly podcast to just simply add value and make it more conversational. So look forward to future episodes with some banger agency owners coming on. Will be super good. Anything else to add, Gilberto?
Nothing. Yeah, we're keep tuned for the upcoming episodes. We're gonna have one of my buddies who has a Cairo agency doing about 100K a month, and then another real estate agency also past 200K a month. That's going to be talking about client acquisition and sales. So stay tuned for that.
Let's go. All right, y'all. Peace.